But I did want to mention, if I may slip back into the budget again, or into the other things that were going on with Human Services. It's a big deal that we're going to be looking at merging the Department of Human Services and the Department of Health. And I don't know if you talked about it while I was away, but this is going to be a very positive thing. We have many things. I have a list of about a dozen to start with that has a foot in each camp. And as someone who is involved with providing services told me this morning on the phone, she would like it if people didn't have to go to 3 different places with kids to do stuff. And she would like it because she's a provider of services. And for example, long-term care is licensed by the health department, and the services are provided through DHS. And there are any number of those kinds of things. So this will be a big deal. It's going to take a lot of time. That means it isn't going to all be done this year. There will be a consultant involved working with the heads of those 2 departments, the new health department director, Dr. Wiebe, and Chris Jones, who's head of DHS. And the intent is that the employees be involved with this, that this isn't just a hierarchy that's going to figure this out, but that the people who work in these various departments, and there are lots of them in DHS, that they would be working with their comparable departments on the other side where there may be collaborative services going on, to figure out how the boots on the ground people are going to be able to make this work best, not only for themselves, but even more so for the folks who are using their services. So I think it's really important to know that. The bill 1247, I believe it is intended to be non-specific, because it isn't some idea that the legislators dreamed up and this is the way you got to do it. It's what the departments themselves, including the various divisions, are going to be able to talk about and figure out how they can work together to make various services go more smoothly for everybody. Another big deal is the extension of Medicaid expansion, because it is important, even though there are differences in payment systems that drive a few of us nuts. The reimbursement from the feds on Medicaid expansion is 90% to 10% for the state. And with traditional Medicaid, it's 50-50. So there's a lot of federal funding. Yes, it's all taxpayer money. I get that part. But when we're budgeting, we got to figure out how much state money we're going to be using in all of these things. And so that's part of the reason that this has been an important issue. An additional complication is that the reimbursements are higher for providers under MAX than they are under traditional Medicaid, which creates some occasional heartburn. But we are going to continue to work through this, and it's in place for the next 2 years. The other thing in 1012, the Department of Human Services budget in Section 30 is a buy-in for disabled workers. So they buy-in into healthcare, which I think is another good thing. We have a Medicaid buy-in for other folks with who may be qualifying for it, but this qualifies working people to enable them to continue to work and not jeopardize their access to healthcare. So anyway, I wanted to throw those last ones in as I was going through the budget. Sorry to make this longer than you intended it to be.
Senator, if I could just add, the Workers with Disabilities buy-in has been around for a while. They did make a few changes, but I don't know if you remember what you were one of the prime sponsors for that.
The guy from Minot, the doc from Minot. No, I remember it very well. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they enhanced it. I should have said that. Yeah.
But you were an important piece of that. So thank you.
Yeah, in this one now they can have greater assets, and they can, the premium has always been on a sliding scale. And and some of it's just verbiage, but it's a good program, and they have, I think, stabilized it, is maybe as good a word as any to use.
Well, thank you for that update. That was very informative. Between you and Dan, I think we've got a really good understanding of the key parts of the human service budget as it relates to the work that the commission is doing. We touched on legislative studies. And Dan, did you say that we would defer the DOJ settlement update to our next meeting? You're on mute.
Largely, yes. I've been in contact with Nancy Nicholas Meyer, and to check on. Right now, we are initially the settlement agreement set deadlines that would have fallen within the legislative session for the generation of 4 subplans: a capacity building plan, a diversion and transition plan, a housing access plan, and a safety assurance and quality assurance plan. Those subplans are not yet done. My understanding is those, along with the larger implementation plan, will be done in draft form as of the 28th. Nancy informed me that they're going to have their first DOJ stakeholder meeting on June 15th at 1 p.m. Well, she'll provide more details on the plans and their drafting. She indicated this morning that there should be a public notice getting posted today.
Well, that's great news.
Yeah, she didn't have anything further to discuss, and I'm hoping that between the subject matter expert, Nancy, and the DOJ, everything goes smoothly, and June 15th really is when we start filling in all the details.
Well, I think that the timeline that the DOJ set was very aggressive, and the Department of Human Services has done a fabulous job meeting that, and with the help of the legislature and new money, new programs, I think they're on goal. So let's turn to item number 4 on the agenda, the Olmstead Plan Draft Review.
Yes, ma'am. I emailed out a draft of a putative revised Olmstead plan to everyone. This is intended to be largely a piece to generate discussion. It's a plan that reflects some of the principles that I see in the initial Olmstead plan that was generated last decade for North Dakota, and also some of the plans that are being generated in other states that I'm in contact with, which are North Carolina, Nebraska, Minnesota, and New York. But largely, this is a draft to generate commentary. I'd like all the assistance that commission members can provide in discussing this with me, and I would plan to try and bring in members of the outside community, both from state agencies, advocacy groups, and persons with lived experience, to be members in work groups to try and dig a little bit further into the topics. I've tried to generally outline areas of emphasis for the state where it would be our goals to advance North Dakota's provision of services for persons with disabilities. But whether these are exactly the goals that we need, whether we've identified specific goals within those areas, are items to discuss, because frankly, the information that I would need to draft that up is not something that I have. I don't daily come into contact with the service provision world. So the entities within state agencies can tell us how to get things done. Persons with lived experience and providers can tell us things that need doing or are being done well already. So what I would propose is that I'd like some sort of subset of the commission to join me in 30 days once you all have had a chance to read this over and generate some comments and sit back down and discuss what's in that draft. What I will be doing over the next 30 days is soliciting members for work groups to take a look at the specific areas outlined in there. Just to say, are these the goals that we want to be going towards? Some of those goals are things that the state is already working towards, and the DOJ settlement is partially incorporated into there as some efforts to transition populations away from more congregate settings into individualized settings. I've also incorporated the LSTC transitions into there, but that those are just two pieces of a larger framework that I'd like to get more input on. What needs to be there? Talking about larger strategies, there is some qualitative piece to what's there. And what we'd be looking for is to generate both strategies towards implementation of a goal, but also specific measurable goals to put into the plan to show us that there is concrete measurable progress that the state is making, or perhaps should look at other ways to try and make that progress. Something that will allow us a metric to measure what the state is doing in individual areas. So the places that I identified specific need for work groups are education, housing, community supports, and transportation initially, because those are areas that it's not easy for me to really identify from our prior work what would be a measurable goal there. And also I can identify that when it comes to education and community supports, there are groups out there that have a much richer bank of experience that can talk about this in ways that right now I can't. This would just be my first stab at it, looking from the outside in. So what I'm sorry, go ahead.
So Dan, I was going to suggest that, and I don't have the executive order right in front of me, but the most recent executive order for the governor included some other state entities, for example, who aren't necessarily members of the commission, but this might be a good place, Leslie, to pull them into.
Absolutely.
Like DOT.
And there is authority to create work groups. So you identified 4 work groups that you're looking for assistance with: education, housing, community supports, and healthcare.
Transportation, but
I'm sorry.
any of the areas that I've identified within that draft plan could probably use a work group. Okay. Sorry, I was just pulling up the text of the executive order, which lists DHS, Department of Health, DPI, Commerce, Job Service, Transportation, Indian Affairs, and the Housing Finance Agency as non-voting members.
Right. Good.
That would be a good batch of experience to draw on, but I guess one of the things that I wanted to put before the commission, do you think that it would be a good idea to have work groups on every area to generate input from stakeholders as to what should be in this initial draft? That would be one way I was thinking of going, but those 4 work groups was a more conservative estimate for the places where I could not readily identify any sort of specific measurable goals that were being generated by North Dakota's current efforts.
So Dan, how many work groups would that be if we had one for each area? And a time to go.
9.
Okay. Seems, well, might be a lot, but.
Yeah, I mean, one of them that I'd like to give some more thought to is data collection, and that might be a rather specialized group, because coming up with ways to measure what we're doing, numbers coming back in from the system or responses being generated by persons with experience in the system is something that I think would be very important to see for us to get a picture of how things are going in general. And that would seem to be relatively specific, special, measurable goals that for right now, I'll be honest, I don't really have a good handle on how to formulate those.
Well, and ITD is a very robust cabinet agency that can provide some guidance and has provided guidance to this commission, and that's what they're for. So maybe we bring ITD into that process.
The other thing is that there are quality measurements that are being done in the Department of Human Services that have been
Yes.
significantly advanced in the last year and a half. And so there's no reason for us to do stuff twice because they are meeting those goals as well. So it seems to me that we might want to start with tuning into what those services might be. Capri Snap and Medicaid has responsibility for a fair number of those, but not all of them. And so if we talk to DHS about those quality measurements and particularly the ones that might pertain to what Olmstead wants to do, we can't be overseeing the whole dang department. So let's focus on the ones that we specifically need to. And I don't know why we would need to gather separate information from what they're already doing since it's under federal parameters.
I think that's a great idea. And Dan, initially, when you started to talk about this, you discussed a smaller group to just review this first draft plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to suggest, if I might, that you start with volunteers from the commissioners to get together in the next 3 weeks and review the plan. I mean, that'll give everyone an opportunity to read it and, get some comfort with the content. And then, have a 2-hour session with a subgroup of volunteers to go over the draft plan and identify those areas that we need to focus on first.
That sounds good. That would be the week of June 7th to the 11th for anyone that has an eye on their calendar.
Okay, and I would be happy to participate in that. And anybody else that wants to participate, feel free to speak up or to reach out to Dan Chauvin. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to participate, please.
Yeah, this is
And-
Ramonic. I'd help out, so I can look through it
Awesome.
and give your ideas.
And we don't have Julie or Carlotta or Wally on the call, so I can specifically reach out to them to see if they'd like to be part of this.
This is Judy Lee. I'd like to read it, but I'm going to be gone the better part of the end of that week because my grandson is graduating from high school in DC, and that's more important than this is. Sorry about that.
Priorities. I think that we can definitely, as a part of that, generate a list of notes or a report to come back to the commission as a whole to help them monitor in the progress of this as it goes along. So we will provide you with your reading material, Senator. But Leslie?
You can set the meeting up, Dan?
Yeah.
Or the week of June 7th to 11th. I appreciate that you're not letting the opportunity slip by and getting commitment right now. That's
I've found that
excellent.
hunting people down for their schedule after the fact is a little bit harder than pinning them down in person.
No, that's very much appreciated. Okay.
I know that Scott and Representative Mitskog are on the call. Do either one of you have an interest in joining this?
This is Scott. I would definitely be interested in joining it. I just don't have a lot of availability that week, but what I would say is if I'm available, I would definitely do it. So.
Okay.
All right.
And I'll email out a tentative agenda, but really at this point, I think it's just about generating ideas, whether those are for the appropriateness of goals, how goals should be worded, specific measurable sub-goals, strategies to achieve those, possible partners in looking at particular goals, and maybe people that should be brought into work groups. I think that all of that should be things that are brought to the meeting. This is just, as I said, meant to be a starting off point to generate ideas. It's filled with ideas that have come in from other places. If you think that those don't work for North Dakota or we should go further than those, I'm not necessarily wedded to any of the language that I've used. So please feel free to use your red pen in as large letters as you might use.
Well, Dan, thank you for the efforts. I've just had an opportunity to glance at it, and you've covered, I think, all the bases. And that's one of the biggest challenges. So I look forward to working on this with you and others.
So actually, I had done a little bit more planning in terms of looking at, we have another quarterly meeting scheduled in late August to early September. I've emailed out a doodle poll to all of you so that you can indicate your availability. Before that, though, and about 30 days after this meeting, I'd like to come back to that working group with a second draft, incorporating comments from that and hopefully incorporating comments from stakeholder work groups. Is everyone comfortable with making more than one commitment to meet so that we can come back, have some sort of draft to discuss, and perhaps be ready to comment on and possibly put out for notice, comment, etc., so that people can attend our quarterly meeting in August or September and have further input on that, so that we have sort of a finalized product.
How about if we aim for an hour for those meetings? If it goes over a little bit, it's not a big deal, but sometimes 2 hours is a big bite out of a person's day. And so if we could be succinct in a 1 hour meeting and really, keep it tight. And then if another one later on is needed, then that's okay too, to tidy it up. But I think we could accomplish something. I'd like to throw that out and I could be the only one who feels that way. And I realize that I'm not viewed as gainfully employed anymore, but frankly, I just don't get paid for what I'm doing.
Well, I tend to agree that no meeting should last more than an hour. It doesn't always happen that way, but I don't have a problem. So you thinking a meeting in June?
Something that would put us in the later stretches of July, which I know is contraindicated by normal North Dakotan patterns of when you actually want to have something on the schedule. But the way the dates fall, it would be, if we have something 3 weeks from now, then what I would want to do is spend the next couple of weeks trying to generate interest in those work groups from persons with lived experience, and go out to the state agencies and find out who they would want to volunteer or be voluntold to attend those things, to start generating the voices that are not in this circle of 10 people right here. And I can incorporate whatever comes out of our first subcommission meeting. I'd like to put that in front of that sort of citizen work group set, generate comments, so that can be incorporated into whatever we do for our second meeting. And then we would have not only a draft that incorporates our own internal commentary on it, but things that have come in from outside for us to once again chew over and discuss.
Okay. So a meeting, the first meeting in June 7th to 11th, and then an hour meeting in July at some point, mid-July.
Yeah, I think we can definitely say mid-July. We can probably skip the week before or after the 4th, but somewhere around 30 days before the next meeting, which I peg it around Labor Day. So the week of the July 19th to the 23rd, or the 26th through the 30th. Hearing those dates, does anybody immediately think of something that would be on their calendar?
May I just suggest that you look, especially in the summer, at Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday?
Yes.
We have learned from interim committee meeting scheduling that Mondays and Fridays are a really bad idea. So let's, if we can, and you can ask the group if there's a preference as far as morning or afternoon. But if we have something that is in one of those 3 days in the middle of the week, we're a little less likely to mess up somebody's weekend if they're looking at a long weekend plan.
I saw a particular expression on the judge's face. Am I hitting one of your trial weeks or one of your master weeks?
Dan, like I would even know sitting here. So every week's a trial week and a master week. Here's
Don't
my
you have like
suggestion.
3 screens up, Judge?
Well, I got 2, but I'm at home. So here's my suggestion. We come together in 3 weeks with our ideas. Now, we just got this, so I haven't even seen it. You know, and I'm looking through it. We give ideas by the next week, whatever we put in ideas comes out. So everybody has time to chew on it, look at it, and you're wanting to go to other organizations. And then we have an hour meeting sometime in July. I mean, I can do that whether I'm at the lake or I'm at the office. If we do it over lunch, I can do it during a trial. You know, that way it gets it moving forward. But, you know, we got to have it a little bit early so we can look at it and say, oh, I don't like this, I like this. And then you would have time after that to push it forward to our next actual commission meeting. So that's what I'd suggest. You know, it's got to get done. We get it done, and then you put together whatever ideas come from the folks that are willing to throw in, and it gets out within like a 5-day time frame, so that, you know, good or bad, then everybody can come back and say, okay, I don't like this, I like this, but, you know, keeps getting pushed off if we look at it now, you know, and then we got to say, oh, I didn't get to look at it. So now it's going to be until next week before I look at it closely. That's my suggestion. And the 1 hour meeting is great. You know, if you got more time, we can stay longer. Some people can leave if they have got, you know, another commitment. So that's my 2 cents. And I'm the anti-meeting guy. So.
Except for those mandatory ones that go 5 days. All right, so that puts us at June 7th to 11th. I'll tentatively try to schedule this for July 19th to the 23rd for the second one, which is the 20th through the 22nd in the middle of the week. And, you know, we will make adjustments once we come into contact with the enemy, which is time. All right, but so does that general overall plan meet with everyone's approval or at least non-disapproval? Work on it internally ourselves, but also push the product out to citizen groups, stakeholder groups, so that we can get some voices telling us what I got incredibly wrong or quite maybe right, although I'm not betting on that. Anybody have any vetoes on this or any suggestions for how to change the process? And I mean, I'm game to incorporate just about anything at this point, because this is my first rodeo for this type of thing. So I'm not wedded to the process I'm proposing.
And I think we've got a really good start. I think I really appreciate we have something on paper for us to react to and move forward with. My question is, if there would be, if we would have comments or suggestions, or someone else would, should we give those to you, to the working committee for the plan, or just where do those, what would be the collection for comments?
Give them to the working committee and include me also, because I assume that when it comes time to revision, I'm going to be the one with the master red pen. This will be my baby for better or worse, but I think everybody needs to see them so that, you know, when we're coming to a meeting, everybody's had the chance to, as the judge says, see, digest, and be able to give an informed response.
Danielle, this is Elisa Mitzgog.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I've been having network problems. I'm on my mobile device, but
You're fine.
I am not available for the June timeframe. But I would, as per Senator Lee, I welcome the information to review, and appropriate input if I could offer would be, I would be willing to do that. July, those dates are fine with me, and I would wholeheartedly encourage hour to hour and a half meetings. I think it would be would just be just as effective, and I think I'm back in my practice, so I would appreciate that. So thank you.
Okay. I will tentatively pencil in a draft that hopefully, presumably, will incorporate both work group comments and subcommittee comments 2 weeks before that second meeting date in July, which gives times for our group to meet in early June, a citizen or advocacy or entity work group to meet in later June, and then incorporate all the comments and push out a draft somewhere around the week after the 4th.
Okay. Does this discussion and these plans take care of both 4 and 5? I mean, because we've talked about a meeting in June and July, and then one to be scheduled, our quarterly meeting in August or September.
Well, the reason I have the discussion of future quarterly commission meeting date on there is that not only proposing this, but the information that unfortunately we aren't going to have the chance to discuss the DOJ settlement implementation now. That information will come out in June. It'll still be something that we haven't discussed as of August or September if people want to go over that. As I said, I asked Nancy Nicholas Meyer to pencil in some time on her schedule for us. Additionally, the August 1st date for legislative action going into effect may generate some need for discussion. So I'm anticipating that autumnal meeting being a little bit larger than normal. Although an hour is what everybody would prefer, I think we're going to need a little bit of a larger meeting to accommodate the topics that are popping up on my radar to discuss then.
For the quarterly meeting.
Yes. That's why getting the discussion in now, I think, would be good, just so people are aware of and can plant a flag on their calendar.
And is the quarterly meeting likely in September?
I pushed out a doodle poll that brackets the dates from the 3rd week in August, which is the 16th through the 20th, through the 1st week in September, which is the 6th to the 10th. I realize that Labor Day falls in there, and one of the possible meeting dates is actually my birthday, which I would probably prefer not to be meeting on, but that gives us some time after that second meeting talking about the draft plan, but also some time before everybody gets into the swing of the school year, and also gives us some time before a possible November meeting to close out the year. A 60 or 90-day window for things to occur and for action to get taken on anything.
Well, why don't you receive the responses from the doodle poll and for those meetings, and we'll move forward from there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else on future meetings, Dan?
No, I just wanted to get everyone aware of the general timing and the fact that I would hope that it would be a little bit larger of a time commitment. So.
All right, so our last item on the agenda is public comment. And does that encompass public comment on the Olmstead plan as well, Dan?
Well, since nobody but the commission members have seen it to date, and y'all for a limited period of time, it's intended to be any comment that anyone at the meeting has in terms of things we've gone over, things we should gone over, and also anything that those listening, I recognize a few names. If they might have any commentary, this would be a point in time for them to offer it.
And there's a question whether the draft plan will be put on the website. That's in the chat. So would you respond to that, Dan?
Yes.
And if
Actually, I plan on doing that. If anyone on the commission has any comment to offer on that, now would be the time to do so.
That's a great idea. Do you want public comment by any particular date? Will you identify that on the website also?
I'll be aiming for about 30 days. That's what I would plan to. So any public comment we would have, not necessarily when we meet initially, but definitely when we would meet the second time.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So are there any other members of the public that would like to comment?
This is Matt Schwartz. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
I applaud you for the discussion you had today because, as you know, we're implementing the MedRes program that was approved by the legislature last session. And one of the challenges that I think that are going to be facing us in implementing that program is housing. And so that's an excellent topic that may have broader implications as far as the settlement is concerned and how they proceed with implementation. And specifically, I'm thinking of individuals like my daughter who are on a ventilator and have oxygen, things like that, is going to take some specialized housing. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Well, hearing none, thank you all for participating this afternoon. And Dan, we will all get our responses back to you as promptly as possible.
Thank you, ma'am, and other members of the commission. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good afternoon.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Good day.
Thank you, everybody.